Okay, hi. Our task for the next amount of time that we spend together is to start and have a look at how we can take our version of the Android guide that's got functions now and start to add variables. So, holy grail, the endpoint that we're aiming for is that we've got nothing hard coded. We want everything to be kind of in a variable so that the manipulation of that shape later, so we decide we want it up here, down here, over there, we decide we want to change the colour, so let's just make it so we need to define green one time, and then we can change everything that is green later. So what I'm going to do is kind of start talking you through some of the different approaches that I would take to do that. You have a full version of this on MyDundee. The full example is there, so make use of that, open it up and have a look and see how I've done this. So the first thing that I'm going to do is focus on the colour. And so first thing I see is I've got that background is white. So I'm going to define something that's white. I know that white is 255. And whenever I see 255, I'm going to change and make it white. Easy. The next thing I'm going to do is look at green. So we define green a couple of times. We do it in the stroke for the antenna, and we do it at the beginning when we set it to green for the body colour. So if you've not come across a variable type colour before, this is a really interesting one, because what it does is it lets you define three things in one. So it lets me define red, green, blue values, RGB values, and that's what I would use here, right? That's the exact same colour values I've included up here. So now whenever I define that colour, I can use green. I do it here again. This is for the antenna. Set that to be green, and let's just check that I've got no other colours. Oh, boom, another white. Another white. So ideally what you'd be doing is defining this as you go along. There's a black, so let's make a variable for black at the end, remember that. And fill is black. So that's my three colours that I'm using in this sketch. White, black, and green. So black is 0. So if I run that, what we should see is that nothing has actually changed in terms of that. Oh, something did change. Jeez, what happened there? In terms of the visual presentation, is I've got a colour bit wrong here, haven't I? 237. Well, this will prove my point, right? Now, so you'd see this colour that I have is like a horrible colour and no one wants their Android guide to be this colour. So I only now need to change it in one place to make the whole colour change. Yeah. So now I don't want my text to be black. Now I want my text to be something else. I can change that value. Okay, so that deals with colour. Now I want to deal with position. So basically what I've done is the way I started off is like the middle of the body is 300, 300. And everything else can be positioned relative to that. So I want the centre of my image to be 300, 300. So I'm just going to call it CX, which is 300, and CY, which is 300. And then I can adjust things according to that position. So the first thing I'm going to do is just hit the body, because that's the bit I recognise first. So my phone's going, okay. CX and CY. So that's my XY positions. So now I can start to say, okay, this one is 200 to the left of CX. So CX minus 100. And then this one is going to be CX plus 100. So remember what we kind of thought before about the centre of the rectangle, meaning that I've got equal distance from that centre point. This is it becoming kind of in itself here. So 275, the arms are basically in terms of my Y position. This is my centre, and my Y is a little bit further up. So this is going to be CY minus 25, and then the same position here, CY minus 25. Run that again. So now I have my arms and my body connected on the X and Y position using the same variable. So what happens if I change that variable? So if I now decide I want the X center of my Android guy to be at position 200 rather than 300, watch what happens. So now the arms moved with the body because the XY position of these rectangles is defined in relation to the center of that. So that's such a powerful thing that I can take my variables and change one thing in order to move it around. So the final version that we have uploaded, if I can just pull that to the front now. So basically what I've done is I've called it center pos X, center pos Y, CX, CY, same thing. As long as you're consistent throughout the sketch, doesn't make any difference. I've done things like I've set a radius so that the curved corners are all going to be the same radius. That's a stylistic thing. I might later come along and say, actually, I want them to be 20 or 40. I've set the width of limbs, so the arms and legs were the same width, so I've now set a variable for that. And the arms and legs were actually the same length. Although the legs were slightly covered over, they're actually the same length, so I've set some variable for that. The diameter, or rather the width and height, the size of the body was 150 by 150, and actually the head is relative to that as well, because that's a direct copy of the body width, so that's a good variable to include. The diameter of the eyes, I'm using that 4 times, twice for one ellipse to set width and height, twice for another ellipse to set width and height. So straight away, if I want to make my eyes bigger, that's really straightforward. Let's just do it now for fun. So that's my current eye width. Now I'm just going to set those eyes to 20, run it again, and oh, he's got big eyes. The antenna weight is 10. Again, I'm using it for 2 lines, so I can very quickly change. And the final thing that I've done is set some variables for the text itself. So I've set a width and height for the border, I've set a weight for the border, I've set a text size, which is 20, and I've set a label. So that's quite a nice one, that the label itself is a string. And so that if I scroll down, when I'm inputting the text, I'm putting the label, I'm putting it relative to the X and Y position of my shape. So what we have, oh, that should be white. What we have all the way down here is basically, like, I'm looking for hard-coded, and all I have is like this 0, 0 on the body at the top corners. And that's it. Like, I mean, I'm pretty close to the final thing, which is absolutely no hard-coded variables at all. So that's the challenge. Can you take your Android guy and not using tons of variables? Not every single thing should be a variable. Some of them can be relative to other variables. But can you start including some variables that is going to mean that you've got nothing hard-coded anymore, such that you can make some very small changes to the values in those variables and start shifting shapes around as groups?